Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad. I hope everyone is doing okay. It's my first video of the series, and today we'll start with .NET 6 API, how to create an API, which tools are needed, and so on. First of all, I'm going to talk about the tools that you'll need. First one I'll be talking about is Visual Studio 2022 Community Edition, which you can download from Microsoft website. You can download from here. Uh, I'll give the link in the description below. And secondly is the database that you'll be using. So either you can use the Microsoft SQL, which you can download from the Microsoft website, either the developer edition or the Express. They both are free. You can just download them, install them, and then you can use them. And to view them, you can also use SQL Server Management Studio from Microsoft, which is also free to download. Um, it is called SSMS, so which you can download from here, free download. Uh, or secondly, you can use MySQL or MariaDB, which you can download from MySQL website, dev.mysql.com. To view them, to view this database, there are multiple of softwares that you can use. I personally use Workbench. So here you can see that I have installed MySQL and it's running on my root on my local host. So if I click it, I've saved the login, so you can see a lot of databases here. So I use this tool, MySQL Workbench, which is kind of easy to use, and they put the updates really faster than other softwares. So that's the one that I use. So you'll install these tools first. Visual Studio 2022 is a must. It's an easy to use software. It's really beginner friendly too. So I'll start with the basics so that everybody can follow me. Let me know in the comments if I'm running fast or something. That will give me an insight of to the next videos that I'll make. So let's get started. So I'll be using MySQL as it's easier to be installed on the Linux devices too, especially if you're using Mac. So I'll be using MariaDB or MySQL, whichever you want to call it. First of all, you'll install the Visual Studio. Uh, and it'll come up to you so where you can create a new project. So you'll install it with C Sharp and mostly for the .NET 6 or .NET parts. So you'll install those tools, uh, which can be configured later if you aren't sure which you installed or not. So mostly in the web development area of the software configuration, you'll install most of the tools that you can see. Mostly if it's related with the C Sharp or .NET or ASP.NET, those are the ones that you'll install. So after that, you'll get this dialog box when you open it, and you can see that I have a lot of some of them are projects that are my personal projects. So to create a new project, you can click this, or if you have a repository online, like for example on GitHub or any other place, then you can use the link to clone the repository. or if there is an existing project or solution where you can find or which you want to find them, you can use this button, or you can just open a folder where you can create a new project afterwards. So let's get started with the create new project. So here, like there are a lot of filters that you can use. For example, Web API, like Blazor, Cloud, Console, Desktop, um, making games using C Sharp and Unity, I believe, IoTs, and if you're making a library and other stuff, machine learning, if you're making a mobile application, like for example using Xamarin to make a mobile application. Uh, Apart from that, if you're making any application or any plugin to be used with Office suite of the Microsoft. Apart from that, uh, there are like web API, uh, testing, and all other stuff. So you can use all project types, platform types. You can use Android, Azure, iOS, Linux, macOS, tvOS, Windows, or Xbox. So you can choose all platform for that too if you like. So my primary development language is C Sharp. So we'll be mostly using C Sharp. Uh, you can also use JavaScript, Python, or any other query language, or TypeScript projects, or Visual Basics, or F Sharp, or C++ if you like. So I'll be starting with the C Sharp. So the scope of this video is making a .NET 6 API. So uh, I'll start with the project that you will choose to make an API. So I'll choose here like a filter as a web. So it'll show me all of those options that I want to make uh, web application or web API. So here you can see that there's written like it's the ASP.NET Core web app, uh, which you can use to make web application. So the core were, if you see like a core, ASP.NET Core, their second one, the other one is ASP.NET Framework. The framework is only meant for Windows environment, but for core, you can use it with any application or any environment that you want. It's good for Docker, it's good for Linux, it's good for Windows, and even Mac OS. So you can use this one to make a web application. This is like ASP.NET Core Web API. So this one makes you a boilerplate for making a web API. And thirdly, like you can also have like a empty project where you can configure everything by yourself. Moreover, there are also like boilerplates for making a project using Model View Controller, which I personally use for my personal projects. But there are also other uh, project um, there are also other project structures which you can use. For example, domain-driven design or any other type of structure that you would like to use. So they give you the boilerplates for model view and controller, which is really easy to learn and easy to use. There are also like a Blazor web assembly applications if you want to use it. There are also projects for ASP.NET Core with Angular or ASP.NET Core with React.js, which uses React classes for to make the front end or using React. Um so there's also ASP.NET Core with React.js and Redux to make a full complete application from front end to back end using two different frameworks. And there is also testing projects using NUnit, which is a framework used for the unit testing, which you can use and test your code. Then there is this one. It is ASP.NET Web Application for .NET Framework. So this .NET framework, it's application type which is only runnable or which is only friendly for the Windows. So you cannot run it on any other platform or any other server that you have. So yeah, and there are a lot of other project types or boilerplates that you can use. All right, so we'll select Web API. So we'll select this one. It's the only one that you can use, but you can also use ASP.NET Core Web Application to make an API. But it's up to you, totally up to you. So you can configure APIs inside the web applications too to be consumed by your front end. Um, and if you just want to make a web API, then you can use this one, which where you can see that it's using C Sharp and which is compatible, which is all platform compatible like Linux, Mac OS, Windows, cloud service, and which you can use to make like software as a service things, API, and other stuff. And also you can use this template to make a web application too. So it's not limited for only web API. It's just giving you a boilerplate that you can start with. Next up, we'll name the application. So my first project. Secondly, you can choose the location. For me, I'll choose the location that I already have. I can make a new folder inside it. Project 1. I can select this folder. Uh, sec Secondly, it's using the solution name. So it's like place solution project in the same directory. You can choose it to be replaced in, sorry. So you can choose to put them in different directories if you like. But for me, what I do is I put them in the same directory, so it's easier to manage it. So we'll click next. And then you will choose the framework type. So for now, we have like three frameworks listed here. So currently we're using like the new framework that's out. It's .NET 6. You can also use .NET 5. You can also use .NET Core 3.1. So they are all core frameworks. .NET 5 was the previous latest one, which is now out of support. The previous long-term supported was .NET Core 3.1, and the newest one is .NET 6, which is also long-term supported, which is good for us so that this framework can have long-term support from the Microsoft, so it can make patches or do other updates on this framework. So we'll be using this one. Uh, there is also authentication type given by the Microsoft. So Microsoft Authentication Services. You can opt to use it. For me, they are really complicated, so I don't use them much. I try to use them, but they're really complicated, so I don't use them anymore. So secondly is like Microsoft Identity Platform, you can use it. It's a bit complicated one. It will make some extra uh, databases or extra tables in your database, which is really clunky. Uh, it'll produce more tables which you won't even use. Second up, we have like a Windows authentication. So this uses your Windows credentials, which is easy to use, and I have used this one. If you are only making application for that is only be used with Windows, then you can use this. It's really good. But if not, then you'll have to either go with the Microsoft Identity Platform or you'll have to make your own solution for it. So we'll choose none for this one. Uh, Next up, we'll have configuration for HTTPS. So we are making a web API. So it will be a REST API. So it will use HTTPS. So yes, we'll be configuring it for HTTPS. Next, we have enable Docker. So it's for the enable Docker support. So if you go here, it just makes it supportable for Docker when you actually push this application for deployment or make a deployment package out of this application. If you want to run this on Docker, then you should check this out. And next, we will choose which operating system the Docker is using. So it will configure using those settings if it's in Windows or Linux, wherever you want to use it. So we're not using it for now, so I'll uncheck this one. Next is some personal choices or personal configuration. So use controllers. If we uncheck this one, so it'll not show controllers. But for this one to like for your understanding, I'll be using controllers because they are really easy to understand. So that you don't get confused or what's going on. So this is a new feature to .NET 6, and it is a really good feature. It makes your API like 1 or 2 pages of code, and it starts everything in one place, which is good and bad at the same time. So if you want to separate your uh, things or separate your models or separate your working thing or working algorithm separate from the project or like the main page, then it's really not a good idea to use this one or use without this one. And if you want to like separate everything and you want to make the application more readable, I would say, then you should use this one. Next up, we'll have Open API support. It's for showing you the API or the endpoints that you have made using Swagger. So we'll be choosing this one. You can enable this later on if you like in the application itself, but we'll check this one so that we can get this pre-configured. Next up, this is also a new feature to .NET 6. It's saying that do not use top level statements. So if you uncheck this one, what this will do is previously in .NET 5, 3, and previous versions, there were used to be a program class and other class types in it, to where it was defined different things or different uh, middlewares that you use in your application. So if you don't check this one, it won't make a program class. But for me, I'm a fan of program class, so I'll just take this one. Do not use top level statements, and then next we'll click create. So the project is created. You can see we talked about the controllers. We talked about the program class. So this is where everything starts. It's a main method. So main is the method that is starting point of everything or every program here uh, for for C sharp projects mostly, but it's also main starting point for Java programs too. So any kind of most of the object-oriented languages they use main for their starting points. So this is the class where most of the configurations are done. Your database configuration, your Swagger configuration, it's using Swagger and Swagger UI if it's in development. Your HTTP redirection, your authorization, uh, your controllers, and if you want to configure cores and other systems in your or other middlewares in your application, you can configure them here. Uh, Next up, you can see there's a weather forecast.cs. This is just a model. It's At this point, you can just run this application and it will show you using this model and this controller, which is just a boilerplate. Uh, Using this, you can you can run this application, and you can see these results uh, inside your API. Uh, I'll explain. I'll go in detail what these things are and which of the things that you'll be mostly using. Uh, okay, so firstly, we'll start this project so that you can have an idea what's happening and what's going on. We just have to click this one. It will start the project in debug mode, and it will tell you what you can see or what's built. So this is the API that's running. So you have created your first API. You don't necessarily have to use the database to make an API. If you have like static resources, you can just use code to make an API. But if you want to save something, if you want to save and retrieve something, then it's really a good idea to either use any kind of database systems or any kind of uh, system that you can use to save your information. So currently we have only one uh, template-based or one startup API, which is a get point. So if you click try it out, and then it will give you an execute button because it doesn't have any parameters to be sent. So if you just execute that one, so it'll give you a whole thing. So the response was 200, which means okay, everything's okay, and it returned us with multiple data, which is not correct sometimes. Like mostly, it's just randomizing data and just sending us with the result. And it also it tells you what's success or if it's not success or something. So yeah, that's your starting point for API. Next up, I'll explain where are the things that we have in the project structure. So here, all right, uh, let's start with the models or the objects that you can use for making APIs and other application, all all to the web application stuff too. So here we are using weatherforecast.cs. It's just a normal C# class which has multiple attributes or multiple properties. So it has a property of date time and two integers and a string. So it is a nullable string, which tells sometimes there can be a summary or sometimes there cannot be. So yeah, this question mark character tells you if it's a nullable or not. We can also use that with integer also, like just placing a question mark here. It'll tell us that it's a nullable integer. It can be an integer or it can be a null. Um, so this is only for use for getting the data either from the database or from any other sources or and also it's also used for mapping the data from outer sources, from inner sources, from the database, and from also if you're using this same class or these same attributes or properties to get the data from to the API, which you can save. So this is a model which tells everything. So you can see this one as also as like these are also columns of different table. So if you're making, for example, a table, then you can also call them as a columns. Columns in the sense that you're using this to store data, and these are the types that you're using to store data. So it won't go beyond this scope. Next, we have controllers, which are actually, as the name suggests, there are controllers. They control information to and from API. So if you're getting the resource from the API, this controller or these types of controller will help you out and will check the data from the database, and then they will send the information if there is in the database. If there is not, then they will send the proper response, either 500 or some other response in case of any other things. They also control authentication, if you like, and they can be used for a lot of things. So especially but their basic function is the data to and from the API. So here we have only one endpoint, so which is described here as get weather forecast. So it's simply this annotation method which tells us like this is an HTTP get method by the name of get weather forecast. There is also HTTP put, HTTP post, which you can define. HTTP post with the name. You can see there's an IntelliSense telling you what to click, and that'll help you out in typing your code faster. Um, Put weather forecast. And then you can type your method, for example, public. It could be enumerable. It could be any type of data that you want to send. For example, string also, if you want to send a string. Uh, let's just do it with the enumerable. We can use weather forecast as a class, or the type of the data that we are sending. And you can just type post. And you can also do some other thing, like for example, integer 2. Like for example, if everything's done, you can just send the response as 200 or some other response. Uh, so if you go here, it'll tell you that there is some issue with this method. Uh, that's also saying that it's not returning something. So we can just return 200. So it's just a post method that returns 200. So inside here, if you write some parameters, then it will ask for those parameters. Um, but if you don't write anything, then it would be similar to the get function that we have. So if we save it and then uh, run this project, so here you can see there's a post method. You can click and just try it out. As there are no parameters, so there's nothing we have to post. We can just execute it and it will return as a response what he has 200. And also everything worked perfectly fine, so it gave us the code 200. So that's it for this video. I'll try to keep the videos short for the next videos. This was my first video. I hope you like it, and please comment in the section below. It'll help me with the video creation, and it'll help me understand how am I doing, and probably it'll help me in making better videos. So like it, share it, comment down, and yeah, that's it. And I really hope you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. All right, see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.